This is Frankie. Frankie joined our family in August. So I was just in the sharing mood. I have been in my own little space for a while. I have not been doing my regular podcast. I will return to it. It's just kind of a feeling I'm following. I'm paying attention to whether it's rooted in avoidance or fear or whatever, but not judging myself, working on not judging myself, and just noticing that the deeper intuition within has said, chill out for a little while, do the work, be still, and allow myself to feel what I feel and notice what I notice and tend to what I need to tend to without necessarily thinking on top of it or not contemplating while doing, just doing, focusing on the doing. So I've been doing a lot of doing and practicing what I have learned or been taught by life the past many years, and getting low to the ground and getting with my breath and noticing what's going on up in the old noggin, noticing the stories that are being told up there, and noticing how those stories are pulsing in my body, and noticing how that influences how I act and the choices I make and the overall way I experience my life. So I have been in a very steady place of tending to what needs to be tended to. And I have shared here and there. But in the moment, one second, got to turn off the heater. You got to see my jammy pants. So I just got done with Jiu Jitsu, and I started Jiu Jitsu in June, and I have wanted to do it for many years. I did do it for about 4 months when I lived in Kentucky 5 years ago when I was about 40. And now that I'm doing it very regularly and I'm feeling it in my body, and I'm feeling my body go through some really positive changes in the past 7-8 months, whatever it is. And I'm starting to experience real community again. I go to this really cool place in Fallbrook called Checkmat Jiu Jitsu, and Jessica Eve Richer is my coach, and she's had a really great career in MMA and in Jiu Jitsu, and it's been such a genuine gift, a genuine place where I go to be really, really present and just be surrounded by a group of people that are all working on themselves and that are all really genuine. And what I love about Jiu Jitsu is you'll meet someone, you shake their hand, and you're like, hey man, I'm Nick. And 5 seconds later, you're trying to choke each other. But it's one of the most respectful environments I've ever been in. It's one of the things I love about Jiu Jitsu. And I think I loved this about it before I ever started doing it, because I really paid attention to it for a long time, and in some ways it was like a passive student academically, and now I get to do it physically, experientially, and it's completely and totally different. But one part of many that I'm learning I really love about Jiu Jitsu is that you have to be, at least for me, you have to be really honest with yourself in the present moment. And you have to really be able to notice and honor the sensations and the emotions in your body without necessarily acting them out. Because if you act it out, your environment is going to let you know really quick what works and what doesn't work. If I go in there feeling anger, which I have gone in there feeling anger, to act out that anger would be to quickly be humbled. So you'd be like a child that's acting out your anger and you're humbled. You're put on the ground and you are humbled. So you have to get with yourself and come to terms, at least for me, I have to come to terms with my anger in the moment. And I always know that if I just, as my coach will say, just, do the work, just train and be in it. And for me, getting to be in it and having to be really present with the person across from you in a very uniquely compassionate way. It's this amazing balance of what I would think of as masculinity and femininity, really healthy masculine energy, really healthy feminine energy, working within a person and between people. And whether you're rolling with a man or a woman, there's just this amazing masculine feminine balance that's playing out within and between. And for me, I have to go in there and be really honest with myself. There's been times over the months where I'll go in there having just a heavy heart and a lot of grief and, just really feeling sad. And because you're in this experience where you're physically moving and you're physically compressing your muscles and stretching your muscles and opening your body up, again, in order to be present to it, in order to not get your ass kicked, you have to be able to push through your depressive response in the moment. To me, it's really useful and it's been very helpful, and it's very fascinating that if I want to perform well, if I want to be present, and I'm not always able to get there, and I can feel it when I don't get there, and other people can experience it. You're simply not as good or as in tune or as fluid or present when you're stuck in a state of depressive state, a fearful state, an angry state. The negative emotions don't help that much in there. And in some ways, if you're overtly, hysterical, if you're overtly manic or over the top or, too much, that's also not going to help you. So it's just, for me, it's this very real, very honest, very experiential way to practice everything that life has taught me over the years in one place. And I'm so grateful for it. And I look forward to it. I look forward to it all the time. And they're doing more classes now. And so I'm just excited to make it more of a routine. And I spent the first 6 months, and it's still happening, but I have a 45-year-old body. And so I've been taking it, pacing myself well, doing a lot of stretching between. I stretch all day long, doing, my own yoga. I don't go to yoga class, and I never have, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't or that I won't. It's just hasn't fit with my life very well. So I learned, when you have children at home and you're really busy, get rid of your excuses and stand there in your living room and do yoga on TV. And so I learned what I need to learn, and I move my body very intuitively, and meaning I trust myself to move. If I let go of my ego and I let go of my fear and I let go of judging myself, just allowing myself to move my body intuitively is a practice I do every day to work out, to allow myself to work out the grief, to work out the tension, the anxiety, the stress, the anger, the frustration that comes with daily life for all of us. And so doing the first 6 months of jiu-jitsu, I was just unbelievably sore. My body was waking up in a way it hasn't been awake for years. And I was really forced in a lot of ways, like, okay, if I'm going to do this, which I wanted to do it, and I wanted to commit to it, and I wanted to stick with it, if I'm going to do it, now I need to stretch regularly. Now I need to do yoga regularly. Now I need to take better care of myself, or the experience on the mat is going to teach you real quickly where you're lacking and where you're not doing the work. So I've done a lot of breath work and a lot of meditation, a lot of stretching, and a lot of yoga, and sort of developing this entire lifestyle around working through pain and grief. And by the way, if you've never listened to this or you don't know my story, I've been going through a fairly difficult divorce experience, which I've changed to being more of a transformational experience over the past 4 years. And it revealed to me what I need to work on in my life and where I need to grow. And it put me in a position, and this is why I started jiu-jitsu, because I've been talking about this for 4 years. It put me in a position where I felt submitted by life. And no matter what I did, no matter how much I screamed or yelled or stomped my feet or cried or bawled or, got angry. A lot of times anger is about trying to correct something. It comes from a place of injury, and it's about trying to correct something. No amount of my effort, no amount of love, no amount of patience, no amount of caring, no amount of anger, no amount of rightness or righteousness or rules or agreements, none of the things that usually work to motivate reasonable discourse, conversation, communication, working through things, growing through things, none of that worked. So I was in a place of submission, and my perception of my life as I knew it was falling apart. And I was experiencing, and I still am, but it's completely different now, but I was experiencing all the things that we all experience when we go through something like that. So I felt submitted by life, and I used to say that a lot. And through plant medicine, through meditation, through a whole lot of amazing friendships, through being willing to wake up every day and hit the reset button and start over again, and simply committing to sitting with myself, being honest with myself, being honest with my emotions and my mind, and just noticing it and observing it and allowing it, but not becoming it. And by doing that work every day, I lost my train of thought, but we'll come back. By doing that work every day, and by going from a place of submission to a place of surrender, which I'll be totally honest that I learned surrender, true surrender, I learned through plant medicine more than anything. And I could bullshit about that, or I could try to censor myself or keep it hidden, but that's the truth. Psilocybin and really good friendships and experiencing that in a setting of love and strength and openness. I did most of my psilocybin experiences with men that are now really good friends, but that I knew then as combat veterans that I got to know through the work that I was doing in my life. But that combined with a lot of meditation, a lot of practice and being willing to learn to meditate, being willing to learn to move my body, being willing to learn to do yoga, all that stuff culminated in being willing to put myself in this place of being willing to do jiu-jitsu. And so it's interesting to me that Jiu Jitsu has been this really cool metaphor that has allowed me to grow through my experiences in the past 4 years. And it's now something that I love doing, and that I am getting to experience real community for the first time in a long time. And it's just such an honest, nurturing, kind, strong, cool place to be. I'm so happy I get to share that space with a group of people that I'm beginning to call a community, and I'm beginning to call friends, and I'm really grateful for that space. There's probably a whole lot more I could blabber on about, but that's a nice little share. And my name is Mark, and I am a clinical psychologist, and I'm a practicing artist, and I'm a single dad, and I'm doing the work every day. Something that led me to sharing tonight was just, I do think about, why am I hitting record and talking to myself or talking to you, which is how I think about it, how I feel about it. What I arrive at is I have censored myself for most of my life. I have kept my voice quiet to adapt to any number of environments that all of us adapt to. We take the beautiful, wild human being, creature beneath the surface as children, and we learn how to fit within the constraints of what the world around us gives us. We all experience this because we're all trying to fit within some family, some community, some paradigm, some version of reality that other people have decided is exactly what is right for you as a perfect, wonderful, beautiful little child. And now you have to become other people's trauma and other people's generational ideas that are broken and outdated and flawed, and other people's ego and other people's fear and all that shit. So at some point, I started to practice being really honest with myself, and being really honest with the people around me, and being really honest with what I'm feeling in my body and my mind, and just noticing that my mind and body kind of do what they do regardless of my sense of consciousness or my spirit or my soul, meaning I can sit and observe the automatic responses of my body and my mind, and I recognize that those automatic responses are based upon my learning experiences, basically what my brain and body have decided is relevant enough to hold on to. And it becomes like these algorithmic patterns of pulsing in the moment. And then we attach ideas and beliefs and concepts and rules and rituals to the pulses in our body. And pretty soon we're pulsing and we're acting out, and we're acting out with other people, and we're just all doing this automatic dance. And we're creating and co-creating without without knowing it for the most part. And we are doing the dance that they want us to do. And when I say that in quotation marks, everyone has their perception of who they are. My perception, as someone who's paid attention to this for a long, long time, I would say maybe I've studied the world in this way. But my perception is that most human beings want to tend to their garden, as Ram Dass would say. Most human beings want to take care of their family, want to feed their family, want to make a good enough living so they just feel happy, joyful, can feed their neighbors and their family and just live a reasonably decent life. And I get this perception through many different lenses. I've shared space at this point with thousands of people, meaning shared really personal, open, honest, expansive space with literally thousands of people at this point. And seeing the world through all of those people, and I recognize that's a biased sample because they're people seeking help and they're willing to seek help. Most of the people that tend to come to therapy end up being fairly empathic people. That's why they're hurting, because they've been in relationships with narcissistic parents or teachers. Their models in childhood were not very nice to them and didn't have any empathy for them. And I've seen that the world also just, through the lens of media, through the lens of social media, through the lens of documentary films and films. We're all of us are observing the world and collecting data. And that's why I'm so fascinated about people, is we're all walking around collecting our own unique data. We all have our own unique way of seeing the world. Rather than criticizing and demeaning and denouncing other people, we should be really curious about why people see the world the way they see it. We should study it. We should honor our family members and our communities by being really curious about why we think the way we think, why we feel the way we feel. And it turns out when you treat people that way, we all want to rise up. We all want to clarify. We all want to seek truth. When we validate and love each other in that way, we want to grow. We want to become a more honest, more pure, more enlightened, more actualized version of who we are. We want to become, and we want to be, and all the philosophies and religions and spiritual stuff, all speak to that. We want to become love. What I've, ironically, having gone to church, my entire childhood, and I'm not criticizing that. It's a big part of my development, my life. But what I'm getting at is it's ironic that I learned more about Jesus Christ and about Christ love and becoming Christ love, and that is our divine inheritance. And I learned that expansively through plant medicine and meditation. And being willing to go there, I think, is a big part of it. Being willing to challenge all the ideas and all the beliefs and all the concepts and all the perceptions, no matter what. Being willing to challenge all the stories in the mind and recognizing the illusion and the mythology, that they are bridges to the unknowable. They help us understand God. They help us understand the expansive interconnectedness and infinity of the universe, or whatever all this is. And I know I'm really getting off on a tangent here, but we'll see if I can bring myself back. I'm playing with this little dog, my little totem for the moment, this little dog thing that my daughter Alice was playing with. So in this moment, the ego says, hey, pick up where you left off. Continue that line of thinking. Tie it all together. But practicing literally what I'm defining in the moment, I'm noticing what my mind is caught up in right now, and I'm trying to be honest with myself about what it is that I actually want to say in this moment. And I think what led me down this pathway was simply what would lead me to get to a place where I was willing to hit the record button and just talk in the way that I'm talking, because it's not something that I learned so much as it's something I allowed. I allowed myself to start speaking really honestly, and it started within. It started with me. I remember many distinct moments where I looked into things that I had believed my entire life and that I had held on to my entire life and that I thought I needed in order to be worthy, or in order to be saved, in order to have eternal life, in order to fit within whatever societal model I was trying to fit within so I could be accepted and safe. I could suppress and deny the honest, wild being within me, and I could become what the world told me I needed to become. And the irony and the gift of going through an exceptionally painful divorce, or what I tell all my clients is the ironic gift of your suffering, if you're willing to face it, if you're willing to notice how it has programmed you, if you're willing to notice how it's speaking and acting out in your body and in your mind, and you're willing to notice the sensations of your body and mind without necessarily believing them or acting them out or becoming them, if you're willing to do all that, then you can grow through anything. And there's so much I would love to share in this moment. I have so many places my mind is going that I would like to just explore. But I was saying that, it's ironic and interesting, and I could explore this at length, but that I learned about becoming love, what I believe Christ love is. And I believe Christ, Jesus Christ, was Christ allowing God to become him, the divine inheritance of God, and that we all have the ability to allow ourselves to allow that love, that Christ love, to become us. And I'm not trying to proselytize here. I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm not even going there at all. I'm just sharing honestly in the present moment my experience. And that kind of gets to the heart of, what led me to hit the record button one day and start to share in this way was I recognize that every single human being has value, and that every single human being has literally been walking a certain path, and they have a certain way of seeing the world. And if you're willing to meet them where they are at, rather than criticizing them and judging them for behaving in a way that you don't understand and calling them the other and slapping labels on them, which we all do on all sides, it's ridiculous and it's toxic and it's unnecessary. Instead of doing that, look at people and be like, hey, I see you in there. And I honor the fact that you have walked a path in this life and that you have had suffering and that you know what pain feels like Robert Sapolsky talks about. If I know what pain feels like, I can assume that you also know what pain feels like, and that can lead me to empathize with you. And by honoring each other in that way, we can help people to open up and to grow and to want to recognize what stories they're telling themselves and why they're telling themselves those stories and how they became so attached to that story and why that story is so damn important and why it leads to them wanting to harm and hurt others or take sides or whatever. Be curious about why people have learned to see the world the way they see it. Show them that love, that Christ love. Show them love. show them your honesty, practice what you preach, and people will want to grow. They will feel your love, that they have been starved and, has been taken away from them, which brings me back to the point I was wanting to circle back to a while back, is that I do believe that most human beings are inclined to grow and that they are capable of growth, and that most human beings are capable of great insight and great wisdom and great generosity and great love. And I think the true story of Christ, I was pausing for a moment, just checking myself. There's still some ego there. There's still some fear there about what if you're really, really honest. And of course, I recognize this now. People will project onto you. People will project their anger, their fear, their judgment, their bias, their power, their need for power onto you. And a lot of people don't want to hear what you have to say. But I'm at a place where I'm comfortable with that. I'm very comfortable with I'm being as honest as I can be within my current state of consciousness. There's probably a whole bunch of shit I'm not aware of. There's probably a whole bunch of shadow work I need to do. But I believe, and this is part of what keeps me being optimistic, it's part of what drives me every day, it's part of why I do what I do and how I tend to my garden and my community and how I want to serve, is that most people just want to live a good life. Most people just want to take care of their families. Most people just want to tend to their garden. And the more I've studied the mind, the collective mind of humanity, the more I recognize that, of course, when you look at the extremes, I think what we all need to recognize, something I've been talking about recently, and you can't point the finger at any one person, and you can't put this poison on any one individual. That's, in my opinion, a mistake. But we do need to recognize, and I certainly have learned, that there are people in the world who, for various reasons, we can get into the genetics and the neurobiology and the spirituality or lack thereof, or the injury, the trauma. For a variety of reasons, there are people in the world that truly do not care about your pain, about your children, about your religion, about your God, about your needs, your health care, whatever. And in my opinion, the more I've stepped back and observed politics and observed business and observed all the constructs that we've created as human beings, the more I step back and observe these things as openly and honestly and open-eyed as possible, the more I recognize that there is, and how do I say this in a way that I'm sort of honoring my own values? There are individuals, and there always has been, who learn to come together and conspire together, and sometimes they war with each other. But there are individuals in the world who have acquired a great amount of power, and some of them have a great amount of wealth. It doesn't mean that those with wealth are these kinds of individuals automatically. You have to be so careful about how you say them and they and the other. But because I've seen the world through a lot of combat veterans, I've seen the world through all the things that I have chosen to look into in my life, and I've looked deep within myself and into my own shadow and my own light and all of that. I recognize, because I've worked with a lot of people, what I really do as a clinical psychologist is I work with people who have profound trauma, who have experienced profound trauma of all different kinds. And I think that most people are relatively naive about what human beings are capable of doing to each other. And, I've come to learn that there's monsters in the world. And part of a major part of learning for me in my life has been recognizing that just because you have deep empathy for a monster, and I don't know if I should use the word monster, but maybe megalomaniac or whatever, narcissist. Just because you have deep empathy for why someone is the way they are or how they got there, doesn't mean you need to allow them to beat the shit out of you. Doesn't mean you allow their poison to become you or your family or your community. And, so something that I have, and I'm willing to be taught on this, it's just where my mind is where my consciousness is now. We all need to recognize that there is an entire society of people who absolutely love power and absolutely love to be in a position of suppressing others to have more of what they want, just to play that program, to play that ego trip over and over and over and over again. And rather than separating ourselves into tribes, into extreme left, extreme right, extreme masculine, extreme feminism, extreme feminine, extreme whatever, recognize that, and this was literally another thought that brought me here tonight, recognize it was a thought on Jiu Jitsu and how I think Jiu Jitsu is this amazing dance of masculinity and femininity. You can't be too far into the masculine or too far into the feminine in Jiu Jitsu. If you're too overtly masculine, usually you get punished for it. If you're too overtly feminine, usually you get punished for it. You need to find this amazing balance. It's one of the best experiential ways to find balance, in my opinion. And I think that there are very organized, powerful groups of people out there that want us to be separated into Republican and Democrat, into left and right, into feminist and masculinist, if we can use that word. And they do not care about your ideas. They don't care about the ideas of the right or the ideas of the left, because indeed we see these people that we naively continue to allow to be in these positions of power. We see that they have double standards for everything. It's on the left and it's on the right. We allow them to have complete double standards, and we allow ourselves to be abused by them. Why? Because we have a shitload of generational trauma that's processed in this world and in our society, and we are all acting it out. We're creating and co-creating from this place of trauma and misinformation and just inherited bullshit. And the they that we are all actually afraid of, the they that we love to have ideas about and conspiracies about, and we love to say it's them and them and them, but in my opinion, it's anyone, regardless of ideology, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of geography, it's anyone who lacks the ability for love and empathy and value-driven behavior. And it's the individuals in the world that learn to co-conspire who absolutely do not have a sense of care or empathy for you or anyone else. Everyone is an object. Everything is an object. Every resource of this planet, every living creature, including you, is an object that is a movable, across space and time form of currency. But we allow it because we have all been abused in some ways by people who are supposed to be nurturing and loving. We're supposed to have healthy masculinity, healthy femininity. We're supposed to be taught really healthy strength and healthy boundaries and healthy voice and healthy nurturing and healthy collaboration, all those things. But, you know, we are all capable of breaking this thing. We are all capable of growing through our fear and growing through our trauma. And as we do that individually, that's why the work, in my opinion, the work is always from the inside out. We all, rather than telling everyone else what they need to do to make this thing better, every single person that thinks they know better than someone else, a lot of people that have spent their lifetimes thinking they know more than everyone else, need to take a good look in the mirror and do the work. And the more we do that as individuals and as families and as communities and schools and states and nations and all that, the more that we will become the love and the nurturing and the Christ love within and the greatness that we're all capable of. The more we can allow the true, genuine, honest, wild men and wild women and wild, beautiful creatures that we are to become the truth of who we are. Probably a good spot to stop for now. This is Dr. Mark Jesenowski. I hope you all have a wonderful night. If you're still listening, thanks for listening this long. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'm sure I could have explored many of these things a little further, but hopefully it all weaved together in a way that's useful. Have a wonderful night.